Chapter 5 Calling Dr. Fargo. In later years, Henry couldn't remember who screamed first. All he could recall was that both he and Mrs. Kimmelfarber were yelling their heads off, and that Nurse Molly Farthing was as cool as a cucumber. Nope. And that Nurse Molly Farthing was as cool as a cantaloupe. "Calm down now, both of you," she said. "Mrs. Kimmelfarber, you go and call Mrs. Green on the telephone. Tell her we're taking Henry to the city hospital." Mrs. Kimmelfarber didn't move. She just stood there with her mouth open, staring at Henry. "You scoot now," insisted Nurse Farthing in a stern tone. "Shush! Off with you!" "And you, Henry Green," she said as Mrs. Kimmelfarber left the room, "are coming with me. Let us go. Quietly, calmly." She took his hand, and once again Henry noticed that it felt good and somehow made him feel better. He kept holding her cool hand as they left the school. All the way to the hospital, as the taxi sped along, Henry held fast to the calm, steady hand of Nurse Molly Farthing. In fact, it wasn't until he had been checked by 2 different doctors and was waiting to be examined by the hospital's chief of children's medicine, Dr. Fargo, that he dared to let go. What, said Dr. Fargo as he came bounding into the examining room. He was a small, round man with a bushy white mustache and a confused look on his face. "What have we here, eh?" he asked. "Boy looks like he fell in a mud puddle." That what your picture looks like? What would a boy look like who fell into a mud puddle? He leaned down so close to Henry's nose that Henry could smell his puffy breath. It smelled like peppermints. "Didn't fall in a mud puddle, did you, lad?" "No, sir." "Didn't think so," said Dr. Fargo. "Too bad. Would have explained what those big brown spots are all over you." "Well then," he said, turning to Nurse Molly Farthing, "tell me things." "You're not going to believe this, Doctor," Nurse Farthing began as she told Dr. Fargo about the events of the morning. "I'm not going to believe this," Dr. Fargo repeated when she had finished. "It's impossible. No rash in the whole history of rashes ever appeared so fast, or grew so big, or popped out with a noise you could hear. Impossible!" "It happened," said Nurse Farthing. "So I see. Well, we'll soon get to the bottom of this, or my name's not... What is my name, by the way?" "Dr. Fargo, I believe," said Henry. "Pleased to meet you, son," said Dr. Fargo, and he shook Henry's hand. "Ought to do something about those big brown spots, though." "Yes, sir," said Henry, who was beginning to feel confused himself. Dr. Fargo took Henry to the examining table and switched on the big lamp. For a full 5 minutes he said nothing but and "ha" as he poked and prodded Henry. He looked at every big brown spot and at all the bare spots in between the brown spots. He looked with a magnifying glass and without a magnifying glass. In Henry's eyes and ears and nose, and even under his tongue. Finally he said, "I don't know any more than when I started. They look just like your typical big brown spots, except, of course, in the whole history of the civilized world, there has never been a case of big brown spots before." "I'm frightened," said Henry. "I'm Dr. Fargo," said the doctor. "That much I know. Now, what I'd like to do is get to know more about those brown spots of yours." He wet the tip of the cotton swab and brushed it gently against one of the big brown spots on Henry's right arm. Ouch, said Henry. Did that hurt? No. Then why did you say ouch? Because, said Henry, I thought it was going to hurt. Have you guys ever done that? You say ouch before it even happens. I see, said Dr. Fargo. Shaking his head, he put the cotton swab into a glass jar. Take this to the laboratory at once, he said to one of his assistants, and the man rushed out of the room. In a few minutes, we'll know more about those big brown spots of yours, the doctor said. Hands behind his back, he began to pace the room. Suddenly, he stopped, his nose in the air. Who has been eating a candy bar in my office? He demanded. No one answered. Dr. Fargo's nose twitched from side to side as he sniffed the air. I smell candy, he said. Someone's been eating a candy bar. Just then the telephone rang and Dr. Fargo bounded across the room to answer it. What? What? He said into the phone. Are you sure? His white mustache bounced up and down as Dr. Fargo sank slowly into a chair. He put the telephone down, a look of amazement on his face. Chocolate, he said. Those big brown spots are pure chocolate. Chocolate? Gasped Nurse Farthing. Chocolate? Exclaimed Henry Green. Chocolate? Echoed Dr. Fargo's two assistants. Exactly, said Dr. Fargo. The boy, it seems, is nothing more than a walking candy bar. What do you guys think? Is that the end of the story? Did we solve the problem? I don't know. I think now we have to figure out how they're going to solve the problem.